Welcome to Short Story Theatre. Today's tale is about a person who rises from nothing, to become one of the most famous people in New England. At the very height of his success, the police chief of Cape Cod is poised to ruin his career. Join us now for Bill Russo's short tale, A Rose for Cape Cod.
It was summertime, and all the cash registers in all the hotels, stores, and tourist traps of Cape Cod were overflowing with credit card slips and tons of dollar bills. Every day hundreds of beaches along the shoreline of the 65-mile long island off the coast of Massachusetts were tightly packed with swimmers and sunbathers. Only during rainstorms did the hundreds of thousands of seasonal visitors abandon the dunes and the sea and flock to places of entertainment and shopping. The biggest retail district in Cape Cod is in the capital city, Hyannis. Quaint shops, restaurants, and boutiques line both sides of Main Street in an unbroken string stretching for more than a mile. Just a 5-minute ride from downtown is the village's other significant shopping area, the Cape Cod Mall. The Hyannis Mall is a single-level sprawl that includes restaurants, cinema houses, stores, bowling alleys and other amusements. There are a number of chain eateries, like Chick-fil-A, Five Guys, and the regional favorite Not Your Average Joe's. But most of the locals prefer the fare at Ma Glockner's Chicken House. Ma serves a special roasted and pressed chicken that remains to this day pretty much a secret Massachusetts treasure. Ma's place is in the least patronized, back section of the mall, where it's usually possible to enjoy a quiet leisurely meal even at the height of the tourist season. And if there's one person on Cape Cod who enjoys his leisure time, it is Rick Bates, the cranky chief of the Cape Cod Police. Known as the dot-to-dot detective, Chief Bates achieved fame in New England after solving a number of high-profile cases. Whenever he's asked about his methods, he responds by saying that crime detection is as simple as a child's connect the dots book. Though his simplistic response does not always find favor with the rest of the law enforcement community, his record of achievement serves to stifle most critics. Solving a crime, no matter how complicated it may seem, is simply a matter of connecting the dots. Pick a starting point. That is the first dot. Then look for a second dot and so on. Connecting the dots will always produce a successful result. That's what Chief Bates recently told a group of television reporters from as far away as New Bedford, Providence, and Boston. His lunch on the particular day of this story is the same as many other days: Ma's pressed chicken, with mashed potatoes and gravy, a mound of buttered corn, and a cup of fruit, washed down with a large glass of cool water. Ma suspects that the old chief adds an extra ingredient to strengthen his water, but she doesn't mention it. In late May, on the day our tale starts, Ma's place is unusually busy with every table full, except a small one in the rear of the restaurant occupied by Chief Rick Bates. An elderly gentleman carrying a briefcase stands at the head of a line of about 30 people waiting to eat. Ma is behind a counter displaying a sign that says, "Please wait to be seated."
"Excuse me, dear lady. I've been waiting for quite a while now, and I noticed that there's a seat in the back. May I have it?"
"I'm very sorry, sir, but that seat is taken. There will be another seat available soon."
"It is not taken. There's a man sitting in one seat, but the one across from him is empty and I want it."
"But that's the chief of police, Rick Bates, and he likes to sit by himself."
"Well then tell the chief that I have an urgent matter of police business to discuss. It's very important."
The chief's interest was piqued, so he remained silent as the elderly man opened his briefcase and spilled a pile of old books onto the table.
"I like to have my lunch by myself, mister. You told Ma Glockner that you have police business to discuss with me. What is on your mind?"
"Sorry to interrupt you, Chief. I just want to sit down. I do have something to discuss with you, however, and it is very important to me. I suspect also that it will be important to Cape Cod. I am an author and these are some of my books. I'm retired from writing now, and since my sales are not brisk, I make my living by giving readings from my books. Here's a part of a poem that I recite. In your mind, picture, if you will, a time far back, and a pitched battle, with soldiers under attack. The clash begins with a thunderous barrage of cannonballs. The iron killers whoosh through the air, downing both forests and walls. Screaming towards the ground, while falling from the sky, they kill both horses and men, as the targets are found. Gaping holes they gouge out, and the metal spheres hollow the land. After the skirmish progresses, the combat becomes hand to hand. Cannon to the right of the men, cannon to the left of them, cannon behind them, volleyed and thundered. Stormed at with shot and shell, whilst horse and hero fell, they that had fought so well, came through the jaws of death, and back, from the mouth of hell."
As he began speaking his poetry, the old man got up from his seat. His deep voice rose above, and then silenced, The din and the clatter of Ma's chicken house. The people sitting at tables, the people in the queue, and even the waitresses and the workers in the kitchen, all stopped what they were doing. Listening attentively, they couldn't take their eyes off the old man, in the Hawaiian shirt with wild clusters of curly white hair splaying out from his driving cap. When he sat down after his recitation, he did so to the applause and congratulations of nearly everyone in Ma Glockner's restaurant, the lone exception being Chief Bates.
Well, stranger, you are an eloquent speaker. I'll give you that. But, what has this to do with me? Another thing, you know my name, but I don't know yours.
Chief Bates, I go by many names. I'm sure you realize that many authors have pen names. I have various noms de plume. You can call me Charlie or Nathaniel. William, if you prefer. Usually I go by the name Edgar.
Okay. For the moment, I'll call you that. So tell me, Edgar, what business do you have with me?
The business of the island, Chief. I want to bring some extra culture to Cape Cod. I explained that my book sales are not booming, so I'm forced to earn my living by doing recitations from my books. As you just heard, I'm pretty good at it. I'd like your help getting a venue, where I can do readings for the summer season. I hope to make enough money to sustain me through the winter.
I'm not an entertainment director, or a booking agent, Edgar. But based on your impromptu performance, I don't think you need any help. All you have to do is go to the Cape Cod Melody Tent, and put on a little show for the managers like you did here, and they'll probably book you for 2 or 3 nights. Also, I'm quite sure that any one of the clubs in Hyannis will be glad to have you appear for them.
In the following week the chief's prediction became reality. Edgar was booked for 3 nights at the Melody Tent. More than a dozen clubs and lounges offered him the use of their facilities. The club owners proposed deals, which would give him performance fees, as well as allowing him to pass the hat to augment his income. Edgar agreed to do the shows at the Melody Tent, and decided to work 3 nights a week at various establishments, for the duration of the summer. His very first performance in the Cape Cod Melody Tent drew about 1,000 paying customers to the 3,200-seat venue. A 12-piece orchestra warmed up the crowd, with a rendition of Patti Page's classic hit, Old Cape Cod. Dressed entirely in black, Edgar entered from the wings as the last strains of the melody were played. His wild shock of white hair, against the darkness of his suit and his black driving hat, gave him a distinctive, almost ghostly presence, which stilled the crowd. For a moment the old man said nothing. When he was satisfied he had the undivided attention of the crowd, he spoke.
Thank you for coming tonight, ladies and gentlemen. For my first reading, I shall give all of Cape Cod a figurative bouquet of flowers. First I offer you a lily. It is the flower of death. Next I present a battle flower, it is of fight. When used by the killer Macbeth, it slew 10 in a single night. Then I put forward to you a red rose. It whispers of passion. Now Cape Cod, take a white rose. It breathes of love. The red rose is a falcon. And the white rose? She is a dove. And now I bestow to you tonight neither a white rose nor a red rose. Instead, I grant you a cream white rosebud, with a red flush on its petal tips. For the love that is purest and sweetest is a kiss of desire on the lips.
The house lights went out as he spoke his last words. A spotlight pierced the darkness, and focused on a small round wooden table in the center of the stage. On top of the table was a vase. It held a single rose. It was a white rose, tinged with red at the tips of its petals. The audience stood as one, and gave the ancient poet a standing ovation lasting a full minute. As the house lights slowly returned to full brightness, Edgar ambled to the vase, and removed the single white, red-tipped rose. Walking slowly to the footlights, he presented the flower to one of the ladies in the first row. The ovation began anew, and continued for another minute, only stopping when Edgar launched into a new reading. The story of his performance that night was heralded in newspapers throughout New England, and extensively covered by social media, as well as radio and television. His next performance at the Melody Tent was sold out, all 3,200 seats. As the season progressed, all of his readings were booked to maximum capacity. His performances were like money trees, for him, as well as the owners of the venues. The highlight of the season for Edgar, and for thousands of people on Cape Cod, was his appearance at the Symphony by the Seashore. The annual event features a free concert by the 116-piece orchestra, as well as offerings by famous singers like James Taylor and Carly Simon. Held at the Salt Pond Outdoor Theatre in East Ham, a village near the outermost part of the island, the event is always planned for the last weekend in August, and it serves to ring down the curtain on the season's entertainment schedule. Edgar's recitation was set for the final moments of the evening, just prior to the orchestra's finale, God Bless America. His entrance song, as usual, was the Patti Page hit, Old Cape Cod. As the choral group sang the last line of the song, "You're sure to fall in love with Old Cape Cod," Edgar walked on stage. As customary, the lights were snuffed out, save for a single spotlight focused on the old man, dressed in his usual black clothing. Spilling out from his flat, black driving cap, was his trademark tangled snarl of wild, curly white hair.
Hello Cape Cod. Thanks for coming to our concert by the sea. As you know, this is a free event sponsored by the wonderful Cape Cod Symphony Orchestra. It is a non-profit group, yet they pay the guest performers such as myself. So before I read from one of my books, I would like to announce tonight that I am donating my performance fee to the Cape Cod Symphony Orchestra. Now I will give you a reading from one of my books. This poem is called, If I Die Twice. Some say the world will end in fire. Some say in ice. From what I've tasted of desire, I hold with those who say fire. But if I had to die twice, I think I know enough of hate to say that for destruction, ice is also great and would suffice.
Edgar read from his books for more than an hour. After finishing, he received his customary standing ovation from about 95% of the 3,000 people filling the outdoor theater. The 5% looked toward the stage with quizzical expressions on their faces. One of those baffled by the performance was Rick Bates, the detective. He was sitting with his assistant John Charles Weeks, who wondered what was wrong with his boss.
"What's up, Chief? You looked puzzled. Didn't you like Edgar's poem?" "I liked the poem just fine, Weeks. But it doesn't belong to Edgar. I remember hearing it recited by the real author many years ago. Let's go have a talk with Edgar."
A few moments later the old police chief and Weeks stopped Edgar just as he was exiting the door of his dressing room. The chief said, "Go back inside, Edgar." The poet did as he was told and sat down at a table in the middle of the room. John Charles Weeks and the chief also sat down. Edgar spoke.
I'd like to stay and talk with you, Chief, but I'm in a hurry to get to Hyannis and catch the train to Boston.
"This won't take long, Edgar. But I'm not sure that you're going to be taking the train to anywhere."
You sound like something's troubling you, Chief Bates. What's wrong?
"The chief has some questions that you need to answer." "I'll tell him straight out, Weeks. Here's the deal, Edgar. You didn't write that poem. Long ago on television I saw the real author, Robert Frost, say that very same poem. He called it Fire and Ice. I don't know much about writing and I can't say that I've read a lot of books, but I'm pretty sure you didn't write any of the poems you've been reciting all summer long. You've made thousands of dollars by stealing other people's work. You're a faker. I'm not sure exactly what I'm going to charge you with, but you are going to face charges."
No, Chief. I am not going to face charges. I have often said that every work of poetry that I read aloud is from one of my books. That is true. I bought each and every book that I own. I even have the sales slips. Therefore, any readings that I did were actually from my own books.
"They might be your books, but they are not your poems."
That is true, Mr. Weeks. I did not write the original poems. I'll explain. I've been a writer for more than 50 years, but I've never actually had anything published. The plain truth is I am not good enough. So I read other people's work. Sometimes I add a few lines of my own, but most of it comes from a pen other than my own.
"Well, Chief, that's it. We've got a confession. Are we going to book him now?"
Mr. Weeks. Chief Bates, I have told you both. You cannot charge me with anything. The works that I use are 80, 90, and sometimes 100 years old, or more. They are in the public domain. That means anyone can use them at any time or any place for any reason, even for profit. That's the law. Further, using items in the public domain does not require the mention of the original author.
"You're right, Edgar. If the poems are that old, you do have every right to use them. You can go now. I guess you can even come back next year and do the whole thing all over again."
Thanks, Chief. I'm going up to a little cabin that I own in New Hampshire, and I'm going to spend the whole winter writing poems. Maybe by next summer I'll finally have written something worthwhile. I assure you that I would much rather be reading my own work than the works of other writers. Goodbye.
"Goodbye, Edgar. Have a safe trip. And I hope next season that you do get to read your own work. But if you don't, I think you should come back anyway, and keep on reading other people's stuff. Because you are really, really good at that."
And so closes today's short story theater. We hope you enjoyed A Rose for Cape Cod by Bill Russo. If you liked our presentation, Please hit the like button and share the tale. Tune in again soon, won't you?